The other top story tonight is the exposure on the Trump Tower meeting with the Russians. Donald Trump's clear bombshell admission that he was lying. The true goal was to do something that might be illegal to get foreign help with his campaign. But he still added one more thing that may or may not be true, that he claims he didn't know about it. But when did he learn about it? Is it even plausible, given what we've learned and what's come out, that there was this significant meeting in Trump Tower and he was out of the loop? Well, we like to go to people who have reason to know. Barbara Ress, who you see on the right in that photo, who worked for Trump inside that very tower. She was a top executive for 20 years, and she joins me now. Barbara Ress is also the author of All Alone on the 68th Floor. It's a evening of powerful guests, if I say so myself. We add you to the roster. So first, Barbara, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Based on your knowledge of how Donald Trump works, how the Trump organization functions, do you think that this ongoing defense is plausible and probably true, or implausible and probably false?
Well, based on my opinion, and that is based on my experience, I think it's not true. I can't imagine any circumstance in which Donald Trump would not know about something that important being planned in a meeting. In my experience, we often, even meetings that we were planning to attend that we were attending because other people were not high enough for Donald to attend, we would discuss them beforehand. He often told us what to say, what to ask.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that many of us have in common with Donald Trump is haggling. Who wants to pay full price? Am I right? Yeah. Let's take a look at him talking about that and details. Take a look.
When people come in to buy something, especially very rich people, they see details. If something's wrong, they see it, and it reflects in the price.
Let me see what that looks like.
That's why I'm up early in the morning to check every detail of my construction sites.
Now, what is that?
Can you haggle without details, and can you brag in a public speech, as he did, that he'd have new dirt on Clinton if he wasn't read into the details?
Yes, and that occurred to me at the time when he said that, and then a few days later we learned about the meeting. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
And so when he does this thing that he's doing now, what do you recognize it as? He clearly wants to help his son. There's widespread report that he's worried that Mueller could indict his son. But I can tell you, I'll give you my analysis, and I'm curious in yours. If you are in trouble for the criminal mindset of obstructing a probe, and you do things that reveal more of your criminal mindset, you're not helping your son. You're potentially hurting him.
You would say that, and that would be a normal reaction, but that's not the way Trump thinks. I mean, he thinks he can do everything and improve every situation. He thinks he has control, and that's what he's doing. He's exercising control.
And so do you think in trying to seize that control, he may be losing control?
I think ultimately he will be losing control. I don't see it right now. I mean, some people are saying yes, but other people are looking at the situation and wondering where we're going to go with Mueller and what's going to happen. So we have to stay tuned.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.